Good morning, Katrina. We're just waiting for Geshe Tabke.
Good morning.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Lei.
Nandro dele Geshe-la.
Oh yeah.
Namo Manjushriya, Namo Sushriya, Namo Namashriya, Soha.
Oh yeah.
Namo Manjushriya, Namo Sushriya, Namo Namashriya, Soha. Namo Manjushriya, Namo Sushriya, Namo Namashriya, Soha.
Good morning, Gen Rinpoche, Tashi Lei. And good morning, Katrina. And welcome to everyone who's joining us online. We'll begin with some preliminary prayers, and the link is in the chat box. To the teacher endowed, transcendent destroyer, the one that's gone, foe destroyer, completely and fully awakened one, perfect in knowledge and good conduct, one gone to lose, nor the world's supreme guided beings to be tamed. Teacher of gods and humans, to you, the Buddha endowed, transcendent destroyer, the glorious conqueror, Shakyamuni, I prostrate, make offerings, and go for refuge. When I was supreme among humans, you were born on this earth, you pay 7 strides, instead I am supreme in this world. To you who are wise, then I bow. With pure bodies formed supremely fine, wisdom ocean like a golden mountain. Fame that blazes in the 3 worlds, winner of the best supreme guide, to you I bow. With the supreme signs, face like a spotless moon, color like gold, to you I bow. You are immaculate, the 3 worlds are not incomparable, wise one, to you I bow. Great compassionate protector, all-knowing teacher, field of merit and good qualities, vast as an ocean, to the Tathagata I bow. Through purity, freeing from attachment, through virtue, freeing from the lower realms. Unique, supreme, ultimate reality, to the Dharma that is peace I bow. Having freed themselves, showing the path to freedom too, well established in the trainings. The holy field endowed with good qualities, to the Sangha I bow. Do not commit any non-virtuous actions, perform only perfect virtuous actions. Subdue your mind completely, this is the teaching of the Buddha. A star, a mirage, a flame of a lamp, an illusion, a drop of dew, a bubble. A dream, a flash of lightning, a cloud, see conditioned things as such. Through this merit may sentient beings attain the state of all seeing, subdue the foe of faults, and be delivered from the ocean of cyclic existence, perturbed by the waves of aging, sickness, and death. This ground anointed with sun and moon, imagined as a Buddha land and offered to you, may all beings enjoy this pure land. Venerable holy gurus, in the space of your Let fall the rain of the profound and extensive Dharma in whatever form is suitable for subduing sentient beings. Idam Guru Ratna Mandalakam Niryatayami. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings. I take refuge until I have awakened in the Buddhas, the Dharma, and the Sangha. By the merit I create by listening to the Dharma, I will attain Buddhahood in order to benefit all sentient beings.
Oh ja, Diksonke.
Oh ja. Oh, tackar sig. Vad är det? Mord, tack vad det är. Det är det som också så det. Det tittar. Det är dollar va. Jag det är man bör ta sig. 세럽이시 요소 딱배고 서긴 미 하다 미쳐봐 좀더 하여라라 샤샤로 아야 다 가서래 아 당가라죠 소소가 멜루토바데로 아니 추추발라 대화께 아니 튼지 상마탐제 저바추 로와 denjurje melu rimboche tobe kamdela sungyordo mangchewachi gazu kyo mangchewachi metewa jaro nyawa yida tandula soba tandri kigore ane lache rimbuta ne yu melekebe na yu tagubda laluda ombu masawale so o tawalo tandri kebe na niko sonza metewa komba yung maduel tapi yung masoy ala antes oh ya chutu bala tawara kesa ani jose jidai shenji ngone sanku ben jorba yordo sanje chonda tamjute temba neda techi jose shenji tatu nyesi shenjurma sigdo 산제 지대에서 감을 전에 최송 백업을 지르되어도 최송 백업 단단하다 펩사를 때 최송 살때 아주 대급을 맞게네 산제 지대를 전발로 와 단단 아주 대변 지대를 전발해 담배 최송 살을 무슨 백업을 알아줬지 시선을 때 말도 산제 전다 담지 전 살을 이내 때 백업을 요 말이 단다 산제 저 담지 땜반내 되어라 최대 많이 마시네 되어라. 대체선 주배 최 중간 가서도 최대에 가서 간가 야부 차대요도. 대반에다 대신 주세. 현재 다도 니제가 현재로 하다. 현다 그거네 창고에 최대바보다 등기 정결해서 봐. 최중단 매초 생겨도 소소 라오여 같은 데 되어도. 저자지 현재 유현다 오늘 창고에 등기 간가 아주 차대요라. 근데 소소문에 소소 밀레게 미니 유지 왕부사 레다말로 나를 대서라 미리께 던르라 던르께는 주주베 전지 사회가 맞도 왕부차서 왕부마차원인데 하마고 구바원 버를 씹던르께는 되니 하지만 들도 미니 유지 왕부차서 레다말로스 파세바 마세바라 소바던데 뜨바 잡치부시게던데 많이 봐 내가 대서 되는 숨기 내를 대버스네라 야 죽게 와서는 제부터 정거요 봐 주미게 와서는 제부 동해 정거요 봐 대수 존재가 내래 대봐요 게 존재게 되어라 남반에다 가서 미니의 용부 살려다 말로 내래 미니의 용부 살려다 말로 어때 손자다 된저게 밀려세 대화 계단 저바 주성에 밀려 말아서 남버다 버시 톱대요 아래서 와도 니다 던던된 것이 저거래 세거래 야 디바도 지주나 망자서 용자서 저저
So here, to begin with, the Geshe-la began with a sort of homage to the Buddha, the God of gods, endowed with this great treasury of qualities. And here, when we think about the kind of life that we have right now, we have this human life that is endowed with what we call the 8 freedoms and the 10 endowments. Most lives that are taken in this world, we can see are unhappy kind of rebirths in the lower realms, as say, hell being a hungry ghost or an animal, or even those that are long-lived gods or other sorts of beings. To have this kind of human life is quite rare. And even among those sorts of human lives, one could be born in sort of like a very remote area or in a place where there is no Dharma, for example. So here right now, we should again recognize the kind of preciousness of this opportunity, this life that we have with all of these leisures and endowments. Again, when it comes to these kinds of endowments, as they're called, there are 5 that are related to others and 5 that are related to ourselves. So when we think about, for example, the Buddha came into the world. If the Buddha had not come, we would not be able to encounter his teachings. And not only did the Buddha come to the world, but he gave teachings. And although we are not at the time where the Buddha is actually here, those teachings still remain. So we are thereby able to engage with them. There are those that still follow after the teachings, and there are those that support the kind of teachings, that have love for others, and thereby provide the kind of conducive conditions for others to be able to carry on the Dharma. And so when it comes to then those endowments related to ourselves, we have been born as a human, and not just as a human, but with all of our kinds of faculties. If we were born without the sort of ability to think or reason or those sorts of things, we would not have the kind of life where we're able to practice. Or if we were born having committed those kinds of karmas of immediate retribution, things like having killed our mother or our father, these are the kinds of things that would act as obstacles to our being able to use this kind of life. And we also have this sort of situation where we abide, we have faith in the sort of Dharma, in the sense of having faith in cause and effect, understanding the kind of relationships between causes and effects. And so right now, while we have this sort of life where we are not born in one of those miserable kind of rebirths, and while we have a human life with all of the kind of leisure, the freedom, and these endowments, we should recognize this precious opportunity and really take advantage of it, seeing how rare it is.
됐어. 랍사서. 뭐야 다 됐어. 뒤중주 값을 송도 와. 된전되는 예바 신도 가세. 저 대화 계단 저버 주 레레레레 사이에 교사하고 그래도. 저 근데 교사에 지다 밀리 좀 더벨라야 그 교마 부사고 요래. 어디 이제 단단다 대화 계단 저버 주사 밀리 차와려야 밀리 더발이야 교마 부사고 요래도. 어디 이제 그 신도나 예가 그래서. 교디 예가 와서자. 내가 알아서 그들이 계산 그 예가 계산을 거기만 와. 삼류 아버지다나 로 교화서에 대까지 랑게 요원 지된 감간데 근데 삼류다네 근데 삼류다네 신의 진예 가오래 삼류 코르 모두 쉐게 레라 슈르치케 소도 아주 배전할 용도 전주 밀려서 아침 시버치 톱 대처 조에 맞춰 다 솔라탄을 파슴 가요 말 디레 공부자님 제치 솔라 친선의 배 파슴 끼그래 소고도 디레 소리도 아주 디니까 시버치 톱 삼자 삼을 거려 말아 아테다 비약셔들에서 레라 슈르삼 주년이 요래 셰니 요래 가 갈래카게 말을 삼거라 어디래 되어 말아 빼끔만 뭐 교신도네 좁가와 sonza 라 밀루 좀 터발아야 미기와 주파 개와 주주 니 침바다 세바콤 라 전주 좀 진서 바로도 침바 조져도 침발로 소바 주부디고 조져거라 교황아마 침바 마무담메네 첸델 우부께네 칼라사에메 가게세메 이다선을 듣게 되어라 그 짐바 땅굴에 주름도 송고라 미기 주분 주를 손마도 밀고도 말아 진짜 세바 검나고 미가가게 세바 마고 버티나 되버라냐 스탄도바 되버라냐 유메메시 미가가 통하다가 신하게로 기그러다 다 세바 검배 와게 진짜 통면도 바로 멤버치 어쩐데 중고도 진짜 수도서 준비 잠바다라 기회 초를 준비 삼발에서 되게 단단한 거죠. 또서 기회 초를 삼로 거야 돼 준비 삼했던 데우도. 이 삼대에서 샘띵지 주버도 마음부 주어라. 소미 감도술에 깨네 장매방 아주 신에다 나도 마음부 톱사래. 어디에도 그 띵지 공내 단다지 삼로 단도 또서 유ring지를 삼로 단타야 그 박차를 지어 얻어가죠. 아니 시럽을 장바되게 단다 챈들에 지 삼로 단에 시럽게 최고 초를 내다 가리 지대기 란도 쇼레는다 시럽지 용도 저 진소 바로도 침박을 조치해서라 말람 점만매고 참자시는 쟁하면 말람 잡네 산지 tem보단 제다 저저 최대 차에도 좀 말람 잡네 딘데션도 주고 요르도 어디 손자 주도도 신도네 내가 와 손자 빼 자침분 내가 와 다른 국업 야보시 톱성을 삼고 요르도 망치와 대 내손을 소버tin데 대땡게시 다른 답야네 민럽실 렌지 야께버렸어요. 대께베 그거들 다 다른 섭소체체 개와네 개와 규들하다 밀게야다 타르바토에다 가르치네 제토에 그거 배웠다. 어디 그거 대 추수도 마송하체 네버도 된다 첨부 임바 그거 야부충하데 심바체 우레서 오라 텐준데네 이버신도가 기부 된루부터 봐줘봐라서 개와치마 편식 된다 가르치고 있네. 주위에 내가 여러 그거 배워서 그도 어쨌든 딜라 팜바마두나 치리아나 저 다른 딘레 고급 상부 존데 소소 된다 교와 치마 편지 된다 마루 첸데 직부 된다리아 메시지 소주가 있는 빼방부에서라 소소 교와라지 치 사야 통해다 치체도 된도 연제게 거랑 메시지 가르치는 게 누구여서 그러도 다 딜레 하고 생각하서 밀어터서다 치마 편지의 유령부 삼로 따제 뒤에 쪽도 같이 쳐버려서 그도 야 what is
So here, as it says in Shantideva's Guide to the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, this kind of life of leisure and endowment is something that is extremely difficult to find. And so here we really need to examine how it is that such a life as we have now is something that is quite rare and precious. We need to have accumulated many different causes in order to have this kind of life with these leisures and endowments. We don't just normally really think about this or recognize how precious and rare this kind of life is. We just sort of think of it as like, oh yeah, I have this life. But if we don't use this opportunity, this kind of precious opportunity in order to practice the Dharma, it's a huge waste. It's a huge loss. As Shantideva's verse says, this life of leisure and endowment is extremely difficult to find, and it can be used for the welfare, the benefit of beings. But if I fail to use it for my benefit, then how could I possibly have this again? So in order to get such a life, we have to have accumulated, achieved, accomplished all of those causes necessary to have this kind of a birth. And that means that we must have abandoned the 10 non-virtues and engaged in various virtuous activities in order to gain such a life. And not just that, but we need the aid, the the help of the six perfections. So we must have engaged in generosity in order to have a kind of life where we're not totally bereft of possessions, like starving and impoverished or born as a hungry ghost. We must have engaged in ethical conduct in order to have the foundation for such a life. And we need to have practiced patience in order to have the kind of form that doesn't put other people off. Like say when one is born as a scorpion, for example, you immediately give rise to fear in everyone that sees you. To have such a birth where we don't have that kind of appearance, we must have practiced patience. And we need to have had joyous effort, that kind of resolve to continue and practice in the Dharma. And when we think about it too, we have previously accomplished meditative concentrations in countless rebirths in the past. We have achieved those various concentrations. And now we are able to, we have the kind of conditions to continue to lay down those imprints. And so too with wisdom, we must have practiced wisdom in the past. And so that we have this opportunity to continue to develop our wisdom regarding those things that are to be adopted and abandoned, as well as the kind of wisdom of ultimate reality. And so all of these things, all of those causes need to have come together and sort of be put, sort of connected together through stainless prayers in order for us to have taken such a rebirth as we have now. So thinking about how difficult this is to find, how rare and precious it is, when we really see that, we won't allow this to go to waste. We will be careful to continue to gain good rebirths as a human or a god in order to be able to continue to practice the Dharma. As Shantideva's verse says, if we let this go to waste, then how will we have such a great opportunity again? We have this in this life, the ability to work for the welfare of beings, to be able to accomplish our own and others' aims. And if we don't use this now, though, how could we possibly get it again? So just sort of spending our life seeking out things like food and drink and shelter and so forth, we are no better than any kind of animal. And so right now, recognizing the preciousness of this rebirth, we should use it for something greater than that, for the Dharma, and not let this opportunity go to waste.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, what do you do, Karsora? Chindianda Joba Kala Yosera, Chi, Mahabana Dindre Kugab Sambuto Kabore, Sungarati, Milu de Sachi Bushevichin, but on that to Rayaba, Sendi Chibut on that Maiba, Joachima Penja, but on that Lapsin Bustraya, but Hako Achene, Tito Gure Sungarda. Oh, Dinga do the George Bande Adisha, Jisung Shiva, dinner. Sending Yunton, Shije number Manse. Said the Shida Yurumbu Maridase. Tanga Judana Lochin Yima to tell Memeshi de Tandako, Kashite, you shate, and Dege Omara, Lubu to sign a Kashire and Dege Omara. Sending Yunton say, Shije number Manse, Tashe, Tache, Lega Mamboyora. Jitin Dicho, Lega Mamboyora, Send Church, and Ramada Mamboche Yoto. Shijak number the Shekwa, Shekwa Mambo, Sierra. Shije number Manse. Say it says and Chizam Meshibese. Tapena Lord Nishude, Tandanga Malo Mambote, you some giorite. In a theatre, Dege Omarwa, Kasiba to tell you. Yango de Pamangel Putus and Elitron, and Yogudo, Cote and Deke Omarisera. Say it says and Chizam Meshibes. Mambe Chula Oman, but a rank de Batan to Lanchas. Ambeto Chuda Omani Treshana. Oma de to Chudisha, Sara, Yavachetu, Sara. But he does a run of Quebe. Tanda di Trugures, a catch issue to that to the Trugures and Gora. Get to that Harrisagores, and said it to Chibut and that's over Mara. George Simon Page to that Trugures. Church said the call Jabune, you had a Namij and Jabu had the George Simon Page some Tangora. You know, at St. Delia, get to wait until the Sambu chair. Yambapa, Sambu to Ratsapa, Pemba to Chamni, Chajus, and Miss Sambucha would have shared. Cheguia de Cendele Cheguda, Judin del Trugura. Attain the Cocendele Penguarno. Rale Penguara, Shale Penguara, Rale City with a Shale City of Guardo. Chev Assembly Yogadicina. Attain the Cendendo Shege number mass, says Chizam Meshib. Nambe Chula, Oma Lembata, Ranga de Batan to Longsha, Sungua. Attain the Chidan could give up the Genico, gave up Corangia. mirabne mirab tayada tindre samlu chitangura yerimbu samlu tangura kimzanda jine ko nami kyongko ya chine me putu da tzu tondali yerimzire samlu tang lega chewura ta soso tondal tang bene soso del tendu tengege marwa se del tendu tenge ene de janja tonda chene dege wardo kyo shima drogi ware kyo shima sobo de lede mado semgi kyundi tramuchen drogora di chima penje le soso tidu nyonge de soso nyongora o ti inde za chende de da miluto ya ta chode yabu chongere wa da chima penje yabu yonya tonda alia samlu tangure se gordo ti de kasa kerso soso we mahombe tidu nyoya de le samlu tangura we shiju menge so de che 근데 계급다 지친들 내가 챙겨니 매 lumba korang yurung bu samlu tangura do nangmide chine to samlu tangura pe tenge chi marwa soso kege chane soso maungbe tudu de samlu tangura do o ti indi ko kyo chime peje samlu tangche chindil kariche uresina kondung ga je chado la so wa shen la chawa pa sangbe yende chamba chawa la so wa tezu nyar soso nangmi kimza ina yabuche tembuche de ro chi chi chamba da chawa kom tentu tengechi ne marisa yuchiringa yabuchi deku samsate tena shi ranga draw ina da tsoba ina da kaba sudan ronde chebe ina da kondu da nga je da chado da tsu chungwa che samali chambo da chebe nga ne go re se tela gu yardo tiende ko pendo de se de la choje ne pendo yore ma do neba ke yo ma do pendo yore ma do je kyawa chima khaje kyawa chima yona mena se yore mebe yebe yichi mena ya ko chambo da chawa shala chawa pa yaru chunde de ko arwa nangmi chamjong che da de ko ardo so so le ki wara shen ki wara do de ko che mene ti kong ra ya ke yo mara chema ko yo na kale khabu cha wara do me yene de de mene ko kong ra ya ke mi do a chen de ya bu che de so so ya bu chong ra ma do cholan ro ya ji ke mi do a sangbu che wara nyamba shi ki wa mara silap ki wara chambada tsawada chizo na drondi chiduza susu na shi shenda tsoa tidu nyonge samlutang gure sato na shi samlutang yuwa mara se na driya newa che na driwa samlutang yuwa mara silab gudwa o ti yindi ko dike kiwa chima da ane kar sore jikden cheba bu yuwa da chi tinde chu ya kashi tinde chu ne chu samlo chu me samsa tinde tengen yina ya sangbu che yuwa ngenpa darwa xiangla cawa la sopa pa jinu ki penpa tu nangmi ne che chamba da cawa ngo so me se yaru che kena ko ride duwa kyo chima pe de yo ra o ya ta de chi son mang tu che so ya
So, again, as this verse says, if we fail to use this for our benefit, then in the future, how could we possibly have this kind of life again? So we should use this sort of life that we have right now, not just for the affairs of this life, but thinking of something larger, something more long-term, a kind of more vast vision. So here, as the Pandit Atisha has said, this life that we have right now is extremely kind of short, and there are many different sort of things to know. There are many sort of deeds to be done, things to engage with, but there's no sort of certainty. We don't know the duration of our life. And so like a swan extracting milk from water, we should take up what is important. So here, again, our life is something that there's no sort of certainty that we will remain forever. The life that we have is something that is very short. And maybe someone might be like 20 years old and think, oh, well, I'm going to live a long time. I don't need to do the Dharma now, or I don't need to take care of these things. I have lots of life ahead of me. There's no certainty to that. There are children who die before their parents. There's no guarantee that we are going to have a certain amount of time. And so while we have this kind of opportunity, as Atisha describes, we should be like a swan. A swan is supposedly able to take out the milk if it's mixed with water and only sort of extract the essence of that. And so this is the thing, this is the sort of way in which we should do those things that are meaningful, that are important, that are thinking beyond just this life, not just of the affairs of this life. When we are engaging in Dharma practice, Dharma is really, again, about beyond just this life. And those sort sort of ripening results of the causes that we accumulate right now are, for the most part, going to be in our future life. But the kind of practice of getting rid of those kinds of negative activities, or not doing things that are bad, of being kind and having love and compassion, right now that will bring benefit to us, even though it's not sort of the ripening result of those causes that we are creating throughout our life. So when we think about like something like a country or a family, they usually are thinking long term. They're not just thinking about the one individual, but about the longevity of that institution for generations into the future. And so too, when it comes to us, again, if we were able to remain and always be here, we would not need to think beyond this life. But the kind of coarse body that we have is something that will be cast away, and our subtle mental continuum will go on. And thereby we need to consider sort of what will come in our future. What kind of suffering will I encounter? What kind of happiness will I have? And this is the kind of thing that makes us think about the sort of causes that we are creating now. Thinking beyond just the immediate life, we think about what will come in our future lives, and thereby thinking about the fact that we need to eliminate those kinds of attitudes of like spite and anger and jealousy, and as much as we are able to remain in harmony with those around us, try to cultivate love and compassion, try to act ethically toward others and act in a way that is beneficial toward others. And so here, this is something that is beneficial to us in the here and now, even though it's really aimed at thinking about our future lives beyond just this one life. This is something that if we live in this way will benefit us in the here and now. It will create more peace and happiness for ourselves and for others. So even for those who say don't have confidence in the existence of future lives, this is not going to bring them any sort of ruin to act with more kindness, to not act in sort of harmful and bad ways. This will benefit someone, whether they think that there is a God or think that there are no future lives. It's not going to cost them anything, but rather it's only going to bring benefit. So when we are in society and interacting with others, as much as we are able to, we should consider that they're not just sort of like rocks and stones and inanimate things, but rather others have feelings just like us, want to have happiness and don't want to suffer. And so we should comport ourselves in a way that is infused with kindness and not wanting to harm any others. And so whether we have any kind of religious ideology or whether we think that there are future lives or not, this is not something that is going to bring us ruin to act in this way. To use the life that we have to develop those kinds of positive qualities will benefit us now and in the future.
Oh yeah, they do that so then. So Dawa Jetan Joba Chusa Militiro, or Yurin Bukajete, the Tendemebe, Chima Penjek Tandashi Trubusam, or the Trubala Niri Messinalia, Chima Penjek Tandatuege, the Guapan, Roshala Seve, Lunga Yusukone, the Guapan, Shala Pemba Trube, or the Nishala Pemba Trube, Sendila Pemba Trube, Joa Chimada Namso Pemba Trube Mabuyodo. Sendele lega chinge kare ina soso lega chiya kare ina tiye chiyo su kyurto bache wadna. Lega kare chiyo ina yana so rigba, kangba sugu ina, langba sugu ina, kare ina so rigba de chiso la kuego yorwa, mi chiso la kuego yorwa, pendo yorwa, pendo chido lega chiyo yorwa. Ina shene mehen ina yako, pendo chido, mi chiso la pendo chido lega chiyo yorwa. Sofu tangtang yorwa, da tiyo ma inbe chiyo la kyawe chido lega chiyo yorwa. 다나시 소자 송게리 치네 미고고 강역치도 내가 지금 어떤 팬도 주고요라 되나시 개겐데 제 자를 볼람게 개일람게 치나 개 마시네니 고버리 치르도 아마그 제 깨질라 카르타엘랍 치제미 지소난도 강거 고야를 차러 깨적지에 말라는 돈내시 제 개게 하마고 깨지 차으라 대자주 뺏게 얼랍 첨부라 हमें कैसे लग गए सोते मीचोलम लगे सोते तो क्या हो रहा पैसे में डंबे कोने चने क्या हो रहे थे और सब चीज़ों ने ले घर चिकनी ना तो सोचा रब सोचे मैं से तो चंदे सुविधा कहाँ से मातो ती मैंने मिल पेंडो ये बस चीज़ों लेगा चाह रहा और ती लासा नम्दा चे सोसो के घर जो ती क्या हो एक चुची यो बता क्या हो जुड़े यो बस हम लोग को तांगे मारवा 라자르지 렌치체데 다다가 조빈 삼기도 티 조마르도 티 고위어도 신디 대화 주베다 강에서야 전달을 가라서 내가 전 단다단다 지소 그거 강고를 리베네 나라서 리베네 줄어서 버티죠 거는 롭송도 왔상게 전주 선바sol로서도 전주 선바 사톱 상계sol에야 신레다 지소자다 지도도 심바체 우리지 지도를 판도 지도 로고를 송도 배치나마 모용도 어디인데 신대 소설내가 제가리네티 로아 아니 샤라 페버트로 펜도기 삼베 개월은 줄답시 괜히 일이 매체나래 샤라 처아가르 총송다 디르게 야가 가르쳐서다 근데 저는 소설 챈들래야 콘도 초로 제라 나게 초로 제 차도 초로 제 미래 틀림 체로 줘야 돼 용거도 근데 용아치고요 삼삼삼을 거네 아니 요아치 말하다 미 고마 쳐주베 땡 개버치지 토버차 대체도 전에 예술에 타르와자 마이바 코에 동엘에 땡도 타르와치 자서 대랑치고 타르와던다 마이바 심제 탐제 대원들라 동에 메드베 심제 탐제야 랑게 파마년들라 소바 마주와 메베 삼제 란다 총바에 베테다 탐제야 대와다 코에 동엘에 타르와치 자고 그래서 대체도 단다라는 데가 요 마르테 랑게다 교회에다 연대 리아 롱네로아 시안레 처와체 발소바 교회 강가 진유지 봐 아니 시안레 펜바트 발소바 연대 강가 진유지 좀네 전다 미상으로 상으로다 시엔데 주베게 차진 시엔 체로다 탑다 실험이 부대 림기 개바시네 심제 탐제게 된 접동게게 아니 산제지 고반시 신에게 토바르샤 대체도 아니 대탑제게 chuy냐기 삼사 Conoce también siempre su oya.
So, as individuals, we have this kind of life of the leisures, the 8 leisures and the 10 endowments. And so we should think that we need to work for the benefit of our future lives beyond just this one life. So abandoning harming others, abandoning the 10 non-virtues, and cultivating however many virtues, positive actions that we can. This is really the way that we make our life meaningful on a daily basis. So no matter what sort of work we might engage in, like say you build houses or you build roads or something, we can undertake whatever work it is with the kind of attitude of wanting to benefit others. These are things that people need. So our kind of craft maybe could be something that becomes a virtuous activity if we are really undertaking it with this attitude of wanting to bring benefit to others. Or things like engaging in medical practice in order to keep other people's bodies healthy and allow them to be able to say do what they want to do to keep their life preserved. These are all activities that when we engage with them in a kind of way with the proper motivation really become quite beneficial. Or maybe you work in a factory. People need various things, and so what you are doing is something that is to benefit others. Or maybe you are a teacher. Teaching children how to read and write, to be able to understand language is incredibly important. Anything that they might want to do is predicated on having that kind of basis of knowledge. And so these kinds of work, whatever sort of work that we might do, maybe with the exception of, say, if you are like manufacturing weapons, that might be a little bit difficult to have that beneficial kind of attitude. But whatever sort of work that we engage in, we shouldn't just be thinking about getting our salary or just being able to sustain ourselves, but instead have this attitude that we're doing this for the benefit of others. And in this way, whatever it is that we engage in can become a virtuous activity. And so it's said that bodhisattvas need to study these various sciences, the 10 major, like the 5 major sciences and the 10 minor sciences, and they need to know how to do these things to be able to help others. So in society, when we are interacting with others, it's this kind of intention that really can make all of our activities virtuous. And at the end of the day, we should examine what kind of things did I engage in? What sort of positive activities did I do? What sort of negative things that did I do today? And over time, we're able to reduce our our anger and our jealousy and our pride and so forth, and cultivate more harmony, more connection with others and so forth. And so we should think that we are doing this kind of practice of the Dharma in order to be able to gain a good rebirth in the future as a human or a god, endowed with these leisures and endowments, and not just for that purpose, and not just for our own liberation, but instead thinking that all sentient beings, all of these beings have acted as my kind mothers or fathers, and they are all equal to me in wanting to have happiness and not wanting to suffer. And right now, I don't have the capacity to be able to fully benefit these sentient beings, but I'm going to strive however I can to become a Buddha, to attain that state where I've removed all faults and developed all good qualities. I'm developing that kind of better part of ourselves, trying to develop that sort of method side of that good heart, that kindness, as well as our kind of wisdom. We are able to eventually gain that state of Buddhahood in order to be able to fully benefit sentient beings. So please set a motivation thinking that we are listening to these teachings in order to be able to achieve that state of Buddhahood.
Genla, we cannot hear you.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah, Reggie Tawale Jan said. Give us some Michuma is it, how can you answer the Rosa? Gombolutu Kira, Nagarjungi, Ratnamala Sito, Reggie Tawale Jan said. Give us some Michuma, Mimi Lumi Namgame, Namshi Mayquimena, Teleshana, Kibu Kansudo. Ngarazo Kansa Tabusuda, Kibus Kansa Ngaras Tabuse. Sai comes to the Mazu, Sogwina Logi, Rugula, so what Tabu Chadazula, Sai comes to the Tabu of Church, dancing at the Zula. Sai comes, give us some years. Chuma years, Nalo, and Ningazu Charles or Batazo, Chui comes to the order, or Tezo et Amarese. Sai comes Rubala, so what the Tabu Chadazula Mazu Tende Ora. Chui come Charles or what is all attended order. Memes, Druggy Chatos, a colors and the Shuelas or what, so will church in Gudwa, or till I may come secure. Long said to the Dieta, so good now, Lolia, Tomba Yokurito, Tomba Manani, so Marto. Paso Dieta, Kada Mita, I'm sure that's a Tombache, so when now Lola Tonja Mamukorto. Oh, this order. Give some Michum and me loom me. Namka miss, Namga to the Puga Namga de Sigora. Loom to the Utayela soba to the Sigora. Namga to the Tonsan de Sigora. Puga Namga Sigora. Nambugazo. Namga Tabasya, Namga Tore, Meba, some Dichadel, and Namga Seshora. Jude on Drag Namga Stua. Puga Namga Sigora. Namdu Pichigdo, Chapichigdo, and Utayata. Say you had the Kanga Pegada, Tongsan Chikoda, or Tilisungara, Namge comes over. Give us some Michuma, Memilum, and Namkame, Namshi Mayes, number Sheba come. You can get some days you order Suda, Trada, Trida, Roda, Rachel Soba. So we want to the years and Tezulitan and another Sheba Gabashi Shetu Budwa. One to the young man and Shetu Eke Marto. Zambulikura Tata and Susuna Ombumena Kagayo Mare. Noa. Or Tisoda Memilumi Namgame, Namshi Mayes, number Shebate, so will attain a kid again, big number Sheba, nine number Sheba, nine number Sheba, J number Sheba, Luigi number Sheba, Soba, or Tezusama de Tamare, Sogora. In a Tezul Tangi, we order. Namshi Mayukumena, Teleshana Kibukas. Teleshendo and Nikansa Yomare Chera. There's a Pasha, so which I said to the Sama Pasha, Sem Pashane, yet dancing at your logo, Nashi, Dada Palanashi, Waseka Machinashi, so cover, to this Yomardo. Humbly turns and beta mesura. Bang water dengue, Bekaga in the Yomaresura. Oh, Tindu. The Dagas were Sangarazu Sama. Sai come the Chu come, may come, longer come, 남게 감라 소바 테줄레 때네 아니 다데 샤고 요르도 테줄레 때네 다다고 요르도 텔레 때네 파 미에 통해다 지 암조 퇴다 삼로 따야다 강가 연구 요르도 류지래가 야고 마치는 때수 강가 미심데 대토 마도 시바 참무치 시바 샨단도 때 요르도 제장 tun다 가르쳐 그랬으네 소부 차셔라 소바 감라 소바 테줄레 때네 다다고 그래서 대솔에 대신에 배도 로스 주변 미 다치 단다 요 말레스 단단한 좀 미래 되어라 미도자 미 풍부다 미 소보다 대솔에 대지 드니 미차고라 어디 되고 대달에 때네 딱 맞으면 미샤오래 대달에네 다 말레스 대달에 대신에 배 다도 로가치야 속빈나론 주된 게 현다치 치료도 요된 거를 tinde지요 말도 근데 다 매르베스네 다 요래서 대sol에 때네 딱 요라 대속의 자와치보다 딱 자와치만 루어라 소불 페네시에서 따를 뒤도 연구도와 연구요라 때네 딱 봤으면 다시 샤워마도 다시 엔디레셔서 직 속도가 딱서가 제서가 제마치는 배 직문에라 라야요바 딱제체는 디레셔서 직 조조서요 말아 이나 매번 말고 소불 땐다거 다 지금 말에 소보스네야 소부 차셔만 보여를 대졸 때는 류스 봤다기요라 디나시 시자 정말 지버래 역시 풍부되어 양고랄 때는 차셔신달 때는 따기요라마도 고랑 주투가 지기요 말해도 뒷달량 아주 셰사르도 돌레 풍부 때는 예송바 티지 풍부되어 좀 따마이세 대콩을 장기요라도 뭐물로 두게 텐데 송샤세 오야 티지 야
So here then, picking up in the text where we had left off, this is on page 32 in the English with the quotation from Nagarjuna's Ratnavali or Precious Garland, where it says here, the person is not earth, not water, not fire, not wind, not space, not consciousness, not all of these. Yet what person is there apart from these? So when we talk about the person, this is something that is, again, as we've just discussed in this section, something that is designated in dependence upon the five aggregates. But when we look at sort of like the various constituents of that, the person isn't, say, the earth element, like that which gives solidity to the body, like our bones and so forth. That isn't the sort of a water element, that which is liquid within our body, like the sort of blood and the various liquids that we have within us. Nor is it the wind, nor is it fire. The sort of, again, we have this heat to our body, the heat that allows us to like digest food and so forth. It's not, that is not the person, nor is it the sort of wind, the kind of breath that we take that is necessary to sustain us, breathing in and out. Or nor is it space. So there are many different sort of empty spaces that are necessary for the functioning of our body. We have to have spaces within in order to be able to, say, take in air or be able to have sound come in and so forth. So those sorts of empty spaces, again, we have this conception of space as being like sort of the sky in general, but here the technical definition is that mere lack of obstructive contact, that kind of emptiness, that empty space. This too is a component of the person, but it is not the person itself. And it's also not the case that the person is their consciousness. It is something, again, that is designated in dependence upon that, but those consciousnesses can't be pointed to as being the person. They, in turn, are dependent upon the various sense powers. If those powers have some kind of defect to them, there's no way to give rise to the consciousnesses. So if we have faulty ears, for example, we won't give rise to an oral consciousness. So these are not something that we can point to, any of these, each of them as being the person, but it is in dependence upon those that the person is designated. So it's not each of them individually, nor is it all of them together. Yet, as the last line says, yet what person is there apart from these? If we were to set aside each of these, like earth and water and fire and wind, or each of the five aggregates, like form and consciousness and so forth, there would be no way to posit the person, nothing to put as the person. It's not as though there's something where you can sort of like eliminate one thing, like blue and like yellow, or like a horse and a cow that are totally different and distinct, but rather it is independence upon these various bases that the I is designated, the person is designated. We're able to say that we see with our eyes and hear with our ears and so forth, but we can't point to anything within that basis of designation that is the person, nor is it the case that when you sort of like if you were to take apart or take away all of those components, that one could point to something that is the person. So each of them is not the person, the collection is not the person, nor is there something apart from that. But then someone might want to ask, well then, is the self non-existent? No, it's not non-existent, but rather it's dependently designated. When we talk about something as existing in this way, where it's able to sort of like bear or withstand analysis. If there was something that existed in its own right that could withstand our analysis, we would be able to point to it, but we can't actually do that. And when we take each of the individual bases, like the person is designated on the five aggregates, we can't identify within those aggregates what is the person, then we can take the form aggregate individually and we try to find that. That too is composed of various components. It is this case for all objects of knowledge. Everything is dependently designated.
Oh yeah. Tanga zundira tinjung la jingzhu zhuwa sete. Tenchi debari zhuwa yina ya. Rwa rangwa ne zhuba, rangwa ne zhuba, rangwa du zhuba si mene. Shenda la tenchi ndel ne sha gui ba chi yina ya se gora. Dili ya ne kwa la jingba ta, kwa la zhuwa la soba, shawa cheba di rungu de se gora. Dakshi tozo re ne maare tele shendu mena ya. Ko tenjin debari zhuwa, konzi nyamdo soba la ming ta ni te tsamge re shawa cheba tege kwa la jingba ya yuwa re, kwa la tuju ya yuwa re se. Rwa me sekpa da chu lemba da saye temba la soba, lungu yuwa la soba, shawa cheba tozo rungu re se. Tenjin debari zhuwa re te. Tenjin debari zhuwa la jingdu la soba, chachi rungu re se. Te she yuwa ra.
So then it turns to this next heading, which is with dependent arising, both bondage and liberation are possible. So here, again, if things were to be established like objectively or established from their own side, then bondage and liberation would not be possible. But because, for example, the person is not, say, each of their constituent components, nor are they the collection of them, it is because they are dependently arisen that they can be both bound within samsara and liberated from that. So all actions, like the fact that fire can burn and water can moisten and so forth, wind can move things, all of those are suitable or are possible within dependent origination, within dependent arising.
Oh yeah. Lenye je rawa me bar sidwa, leda nyomombe wange, rawa me ba keji la shendo jurwe, yile sumba kewe, shi punso de la ase, tunge ta kora she chalas, kora sidwa, ngarazo kora de yora, kora sidwa la doa ri tu doa, nyawa yeda tundu meche, lashe lama yinche, tu yordo. Oh, tilia kora sidwa tu se, korsa de tu yora. Dwari tu se. Da course de garseresne, Dandru Ravachine, Sobodi, da Semgi Dwachene, Yan Semdi, me semle to Samchas, me Jola Tusona, Samchas, Tela Coasura, Dagitambu Dandru Redortade, me Liliaco, Samchara, Tugara, Ninsam Chora, Samchane. Mindre Dandru Ravachi Shisunako, Samchen Roma Resigora. Number Shibade. Lute de college Gora Sachana, Tochana, Makali, Samtichi Dura. Sim de Semcora, Unituji, and Shandachi, Lu Shandachi in Edra, Shandachi Luko, Samcha Credits, Tudu Resigora. Or the Kawachin Chitun, Dwari, Kawachin Chitu, Samchora, the Locoro Asigora. Korega Korbiora, Tanda de Michite or Tadine Cotendro Samchaso, Yanhal Samchaso, Yidal Samcha, Tendricha Rodes ora. So Zangazo, the Carician was a letter Yamobawagi, and a Kechi Leshando Jurgangera, and a Kechi Leshando Jure, Yila Sumbachi Punso de Lasse, Sobotel Segordon. A Kechi in Juroche, attended Samutana, Yila Sumbachi, Yila Joake and the Charity Ordo. You soon Sigdo, or Tination, Yila Joake, Shichire Sigora. Punso de Lane, Tunge Tembaya Sigora. Tunga Sigora, Tunga was the Tungere Sigomara, Tungeta Tunga or Kebayora. Tunga in a Choyangura. Tunga was the Tunga Warsinge, Tunga Kitchunge, Tunga Shichingetilla, Tunga was a chora. Tunga was a Tunga Wata, Kora Shichalas, or Kora Tungajiras, Tunga Ware, Kora Res, Kora said, Duari Duchine to Samchane. Namshi tuning also the chorus. Ya such a lady pumble, me pumbung of the chorus and the other. Chorus chalas. Language around me by Kinji Pumbu, Retungi, Jura Rakbe come Gashila, Kawada Choashi Tanya Agba Sedwa. Oh, let a number of one around Meba. And a Kinjik Pumbu Ritungi and Jura Pumbu Ritungi Jura Nicare Jura Rakpa or Pumbu Judo Jura Wagaraz Musu Toyer Sera. Tadoko Namshiki Ten Chigiomare, Chigiore, Tata Namshiki Ten Michigan Chagdua. That she's Rogrese, Pumbu Lagamachi, Namshiki Ten Machidu, and that she Rorese. Chiwasigra. When Joa Rabasung as a Muslim toilet, so than Joa Rabasigora, Keji in Jurashi, Delegaji Chamun Joa Chamusigora. Joa Rabe Negam Gashila Kewase, Joa Rabashi, Dandurachineshi, Namshidi me, Lula Samchasona, and the Kewasura, Millet Kewasura. I am Minepa, Namshidi, me Namshidi Tenshi and Joa Namsheda Luni Kagachasunia, Chiwa Sigara. She Tanya Tagba Tetabu, Pumbu Keshi, $20, or Tetabu Pumbu, let a number one get you away. Quatelia, Pumbu $20, tank with a tardy till a 10, a Teta drill the tank with Ardo. Then by that Teta drill the neck with a Tisido Cansa de la Coa Bass, Cansa de la Coa Bass, Corsa de Caresneti, Lula Soba. Pumbunga with the courage. Della Conde della Casa des mi Pumbulane, Tedanyam to do Resinanche Teora. The Andresican, the drips of the land, Tedanyam to go to do Nazi Tequara. Coabashin Jogos. A tip of the Chilana.
So here then, due to karma and the afflictions, the five aggregates, form, feeling, discrimination, compositional factors, and consciousness, continually change each instant without any independence and are therefore known as the source of bother, that which brings suffering and cyclic existence. So here, when we are talking about the kind of referring to samsara and the 6 types of beings within samsara, what is really being referred to? Now, normally we refer to those like appropriated aggregates that act as a basis for the consciousness of a being as being samsara. And this sort of process by which, again, we will have a mental consciousness that continues on past the sort of passing away of this coarse body, then that connects with another existence, that connects to a new rebirth. Like say one has been an animal, and that animal, the form of that, there's a sort of death of that, and their mind, that subtle mental continuum, connects with a new, say, life as a human. This kind of process of continually connecting is what we refer to as cyclic existence. And so why, in terms of why does this come about? It is due to karma and the afflictions that one takes up these various aggregates. And so here, it is again referred to as, I mean, it is something that is the source of bother, and it is something that brings about suffering. So here there's the term, there's a difference between suffering, which is always a feeling, and that which brings about suffering or acts as a cause for suffering. And so the aggregates have no independence. Produced and destroyed due to karma and the afflictions, they are constantly in flux across a stream of moments, wherein the aggregates of the present moment are of a similar type to the aggregates of the former moment. So there's this kind of continuity to this kind of aggregates that we have taken up. But on certain occasions, when there is a course change, you use the conventional terms birth and death. So when we take up a new life as or a new form aggregate as, say, an animal, that would be called a birth. And when we cast off the kind of form aggregate and there's that coarse sort of impermanence, that would be called death. And as long as a person must be connected to and dependent on such a stream of momentarily changing aggregates, this person is posited as someone belonging to cyclic existence. So so long as we are in this kind of cycle of our consciousness has a particular support and then casts that off and takes up another, these then 5 aggregates are referred to as samsara, the kind of appropriated aggregates. And the person then is posited as one who belongs to cyclic existence, or who has those kinds of those samsaric aggregates.
Oh yeah. Tetarnaya sigdwa, tetarnaya stende yinaya sigora. Tetarta tu ne kuba shini mai de sene garazu ko jete. Jawa thoma mevana tanda podo khorre tanda tu stita tu te rebesana tende te kuechi mare sigora kudan ke de jota yoro ko kudan ke mene ngob condition yo ayo marto kudan ke de jota ge ne tele jota yo de sigora yedana ya tedar ta tu ne kuba shini mai de sera aresne chi kyungi chane se number sheba da kansa rara kanla tembe Judindasa, number Shibada, me Pumbuda, Tundri Pumbula Soba, Joateta de Pumbuta Zoyaga, Judan Ken, Tenny on Goreswara. Kala Tembe Judan Kenda. Then Tashi Nega, Jujim Medra Latene, and the Casa Tasaki Pumbudea, and it Medra Medrashe, Sauro Dreta, Satan Meta, Chicken Yar Dreta, and the Parushile Leta Yambo. Dole che meguba, kichi che meguba, attended Gurju or Sivara. Jujida, Dashi Negab, Shene Shendo, Shene Shendo, Kurtorulas, Juata or Sigara. Judan Kelly Tenichua Soza. And a tundred of Shine, tundred keg, Judan Kenti Pamerson, tundred keg medua. That led a Yumubo, Miliki, led a Yumubo, Miliki, Judipa Kashana. Yogi Miliki may shouted. Della Sangegi, Negurtoba, attention, Reverend Joala Romance, or Pumbutelia, Saru drag, Negab Judre, Nema Negab Tendesi or a Tati Remara didn't Juduris. No, in a society negab Tambuka, Chambani, Chanju Semakineko, Chanju Semke at a Tombanito, Negam Jue Yorto. O tina shene kansa sosokyo de pagwe kansa ge negam juye yordo sokwe negam da semgi negam kanga juni saru ya dre yorde sora sange ge ne yur toba ya te je debra jwa la leba ro ese tende sonza ko juda kele juandu de ene takshida chashala juandu yordo tende de ane ko tende beba chigi ne sora Tenji Debra Joala, Lekbar Roes, Tendelia, Chuching, Tende Sonza Hotel in Joachimson, Devil Joadura. Oh, Joadu Joadis Roes. Bebe top Kenas and Garazum Bezuchene, top Kigi Inas Gordo. And then Marikba 다 제베 넘버 쉐바 담부 가지고 과코도 tom에 말을 뵙고내라 근데 이번 두시기 레사는 과코요라 자 말을 삭바다 제베 레남세 말을 왕게 ene le se sa so na le ke wa ina mi ke wa ina kari na sak che gi le se go ra nyom be wa ge chag dang ge wa ge chong e ke le che na te le sak che gi le se go ra chag dang ge sha wa do ma yu re che che ne le sa ne tu de che so che ma ne sa mi gi le se de tu de yo ye yo to to ke ne ma ri be sak ba da che be le nam rim gi dim ne se ma ri be 왕체 기왕의 차단기 왕의 사배 네래 미게 와서라 사회매체 개와도 저 사회매 차서나 개와도 차단기 왕의 개와 사회매 차오라 차단 매배 왕의 개와 사회도 권에 권도야 빼고라 내시 내주 지신 어레 텐데 제발 때는 시제 내주 단단가서 지다와신도 메신바도 지다와신도 셰바 유교하래서라 ni tanda nga zo sosu ma to samgyu me simje shengi tidu la jimbe nyeba kaya nawa me sheba tendre me ba she simje tamje ge te tonghe de tre da peba tuya la soba tendre samli ke to gure se go do dani ji le so chawa se simje tamje la peba da se janju simba de jine rag le de kar simje tamje ge peba tuya da kange se de kurang le ge re chire do ra Tichuna Koran Tanda Trusung Samgyore. Tele laws of Koran Chibut and Samlutangi Mara. Ranga Lengere to say or less Chawasa. Dani Les Jawasim Tamjela Pebata, Tamje Tevecheto, Beba so tub that syrup, Tanda tub, Sambu Chate, Ra. Syrup de Dombani Tombala Soba, Landurji Nesheba, Shija Nezu Sheba. Tini Sambuda, Syrup ni the Tarchim Besigora. rimgi ya pelde ene kuba malu ba da kyo tamje da treve number she ba da kuba malu ba la treve sanje ye ne ga kya tension de ban jo ala ge ba do se gre ser da to so ma do cha so ya
So here again, when it comes to cyclic existence, we have been taking rebirth since beginningless time. We are subject to this process of taking up one kind of form, one kind of life, and then having to go to another. But it continues here in the text saying, nevertheless, it is not necessary for the person to always remain this way. In general, from the viewpoint of this stream of change, both consciousness and the person transform from one situation to another, either in terms of the causes and conditions on which they depend, or in terms of their bases of imputation. So here, when it comes to the kind of ways in which things change, they are constantly there's this stream of change, both in terms of the consciousness of the person, both in terms of the consciousness and the person, and they can be transformed by their various causes and conditions, as well as the kind of basis of imputation. So here, when we change the various kind of causes and conditions, we can change the results. It is possible to have that kind of efficacy, wherein if we say don't like the result that we are in, we can make an effort at cultivating different causes in order to develop the kind of result that we would like. So within the framework of dependent arising, it is quite possible that bad situations can become good and good situations can become bad. Therefore, if those who desire liberation make strong effort, they can gradually reduce the karma contaminated by ignorance and gradually increase both wisdom and method. So the wisdom that precisely knows the ontological status of things, and the method of making effort at the imperative to help all living beings and to provide them with all happiness. So here, when it comes to our state right now, when we may not have things like love and compassion, we may not have yet developed those sorts of attitudes, but it is in dependence upon cultivating their various causes. If we have the kind of if we make the effort at developing those particular causes, we are definitely going to generate the kind of result. We are able to develop our love and compassion. We can, after we engage in various kinds of analysis and reasoning, develop our wisdom such that we can have a direct realization of reality. And so because these things are causally dependent, it makes a difference what sort of causes we create. So here we have, since beginningless time, again, accumulated the kind of karma that comes from contaminated ignorance. Motivated by this kind of ignorance, we can create contaminated karma. But we are able to, if we make an effort, actually reduce that kind of cause. We can get rid of the kind of causes that will lead to this continued sort of stream of suffering, and instead develop both our method and wisdom. We can develop those kinds of positive, loving attitudes towards others, love and compassion, and we can get away from sort of being indifferent toward others, and instead we can have that kind of attitude of wanting to liberate them from their sufferings as well. And right now we don't understand the way that things are, but we have the capacity to develop our wisdom, to develop it such that we can reach that state of Buddhahood. So it's not just that we are sort of doing this for our own freedom, but looking at others and recognizing that they are just like us. We have this kind of desire to develop our own sort of method side, the goodness, the kindness within us, as well as the kind of wisdom side. And with dependent arising, continuing in the text, it is certainly possible for your consciousness to become free of all decline, to become completely free of all trouble, and to reach Buddhahood. So because things are dependently originated, we have then the capacity to reach Buddhahood if we create the proper kind of causes and conditions.
Oh, yeah. Oh, that didn't matter. That didn't oh, then it out is done. Oh, tongue to the castle. The gingerbread you asked it under the solution of the Capsora. Su tenjin rebar juwa tonga de chu tongo se, su chu tonga de sanje tongo se jin roswa. Sa tenjin rebar juwa de kare sen tele yala chungi de yungu doa. Chidan duche tenje se de kanzu she sara. Ta tele de kasora. Yala chungi de yungu wara. Tele tenjin rebar juwa kanshe na se wada. Tenjin rebar juwa kanshe na dida de. Deyo na dejun deke beshe deke kande maribe kenjin duche kenjin nabar shiba kenjin bingda sus tende yangla chungi de yunguwara. Deje debar jo kanshe na siro. Deyo na dejun se dona le rwakar se salu jambe dona. Deyo na dejun se gyudan kenyi tsawa deyo na ni debu teta dejun gure se gwara. Gyudan kenyi ma tsana gyudan kenyi tsana kora kenyi gure se. Gyudan kenyi matsana kenyi ma re se. Di ma do cheba bo shenda chegi tene ti ke kuyo samne ke ya da. Di maji kuyo samne samlu tani jikden ji cheba bo onju la so wate zu se gyo da. O tindel tigu ma re se. Di yo na di jo se yo mebe kyala tene chunga se gyo. Gyudin tsana kenyi re se. Gyudin matsana kenyi ma re se. Di mi cheba bo shenda je samlu tani kol ti kugu yo ti kugu mesa tende chene ke ya yo ma re se. Jikden cheba bo di pa meba chugu yo ra. Jikden ji cheba bo semki yo wa, gulung ji yo wa, ngandu tani ke kugu ma re se wa ra. Di yo na di chung se. Di kebe di ker se de. Kyutan ken di keba sonzan drebu di ke yo ra. Di midagwa tume kyu le ke ra ma do. Takbe kyu chi so se ra, turen chame takwa se ra, tu takwa se ra. Tende takbe kyu kande chige drebu ke yo ma re se. Kyu koran di ke wa sonzan di tele tene drebu ke to gure se. Di kebe se di ke se. Kyutan ken koran di keba sonzan. Pena sada, chuda, luda, joshida, suela soba kanga, ya tab suna. Kyu ya wuchi chang suna, drebu ke yo gura. Kyu koran le kyu kora mada, kyu dili kyu meba tende shagu mara namba. Chiruwe ne tambu kyu dili ya, chi so che takpa tembo chik shagira, tele tene chuk tende yo mara. Kyu dan ken kari na kola kyu jin yo de tikyo, tungmi re. Kola thoma yo mara, tambu dine chunga ditalu yo mara, sechi yo mara. Dan zambulin ditabu chi ne ko thoma yungura. Tambu nambu tongba re, chima ne di chawa re se, di yungura mada chida. 토마츠에 요 말도 어때도 메타바토 메켄데 좋아서 시에도 디케베신 되게 간데 말에 베켄지 두지 나바시 시베케 메다 소스 마텐데 양라 중이 시에도 이는 네베켄을 때니 좋아 코나 계시게 그 메타바 임바삼게 시게 말어 코나 팀모 많이 바 계시게 그다 깨를 때는 팀모 많이 바 드부디 깨고 그래서라 일단데 양라 중이 되는 것도 일라 로스 좋아도 로스 미 좋아서 코아 시베체도 도매 말이 배워 이제 니만 도지 소반납시 때도 양라 중이 되는 드레쇼에서 코아 쿠주시거라 코알은 독배 주셔도 좀 말이 반 각배 도시가 배 남시가 스카치가 시가 그래서 각배는 뭐데 타르바토 주디 시야기와라 어딘가 저 디날시다 시야마 코로 올려 다시 말로에서 때도 양라 중이 것도 로가이 봐 로스가 되게
So here, then turning to the next kind of section. Again, this is, we are talking about dependent origination as it is explained within the Rice Seedling Sutra. And here, as we have quoted before, it says that he who sees dependent origination, he sees the Dharma. And he who sees the Dharma sees the Buddha. And so here, dependent arising is getting at this fact that everything arises from various causes and conditions. It's not the case that anything arises either from sort of a permanent cause or causelessly or these various different ways. And here, returning now to this next section. So again, when we talk about dependent origination, the most important kind of form of dependent origination is these 12 links explaining how it is that due to ignorance we create karmic formations and then consciousness and so forth in this kind of continuum. And so here, as it says in the Rice Seedling Sutra, that is dependent. So again, because this exists, this occurs. Because this arose, this arises. So stressing the importance of causality here, that if the causes and conditions are assembled, then the result will necessarily come about. So that is dependent on ignorance. Conditioning factors occur. Dependent on conditioning factors, consciousness. Dependent on consciousness, name and form. Dependent on name and form, the 6 sense spaces, and so forth, all the way through the 12 links. And so it is due to the various causes being assembled that when we have this kind of fundamental ignorance, we will create those kinds of karmic formations or conditioning factors that in turn lead to the kind of repeated taking rebirth in samsara. So this is also getting at the fact that these, it's not necessary to have the sort of preceding thought of a creator or some kind of divine being. These things will follow after their causality. They follow their causality. There's no sort of like, again, there's no thought of a creator that is involved in things coming about. It's not as though because this particular sort of being willed it, that we can talk about those kind of things coming into being. And so again here, as it says, that is dependent on ignorance. This again stressing that we need to understand the way it is in which dependent on, because this exists, this occurs, stressing that again it is the assembly, the coming together of various causes and conditions, not say the sort of will of a creator deity or something like that. And so here in this explanation in the Rice Seedling Sutra of dependent arising, particularly addressing the kind of 12 links of dependent arising, this is then something that is taught in a sort of forward order, how it is that due to ignorance we then continue to create various conditioning factors, and then the ensuing links occur, and as well the kind of way in which we reverse that, and the way in which by eliminating ignorance, by getting rid of that, one is then able to eliminate the kind of conditioning factors that come from that, and consciousness and so forth. And so here this teaching of dependence independent origination, negates the need for some kind of creator deity. It is simply a matter of the causes and conditions being assembled.
Oh yeah. 어쨌든 다 로쇼스도 근데 야라 중에 시에서 과 코든들은 이래서 코르게 와레스티 셰요라 다 루스 루토스라 루스 중아도 루스미 중아서 루도 마르반 각벤 두신가 베껴와가 스트레셔도 다음에 마르반 각벤 이번 두신가 선반 남신가 시범명소가 제가 각벤을 붙이셔도 이 타르와 토베 스티셔요라 마르반 각바스도 지나 마르바 매바 좀 쓰기요 말에 마르바 동반이 또 그러와 동반이 거에 짜와 마르바들어 다도 여반 좀 붙들어 이 신이 매바 또 별로데 다음에 또 별로더라 다음에 또 별로데 저 다음에 또네 거에 짜와 당지 나오 냐마랑원에 주반 준비 진바되기 신이 삼로다에게 유 나랑와데 매바 또 우여라 나랑와데 매바 또네 때 곰네 는 무슨도 또 텐데시데 때는 말이 받은 가도 우여라 나오 냐마랑와도 주반 준비 남중하지 삼로나리에 배가지데 매버를 두고 와라. 다음에 또 소나 다음에 보면 숨도 또 소나 근데 당시 나오냐 별로 나랑원에 두 번째 뭐든 가두고 와라. 이 매버샤요라. 이 매버샤나 말을 뵙고내라는 이번 두시기 내사버디 용거 말와. 말을 가베 두시 가시고라. 두시 가나네 숨바 남식 때도 파샤샤야 돼 용거 말와. 근데 대장마치 때도 양라 시가바 시가도 숨가 니겨와가네 돈다 강가 가도 여도 돈다 마르바게 시메바 담에 무슨도 또도 세바 차다 몽숨셔라 뭐바 마르바든 가서나 아니 차바도 용거 말아 신샤데 다다 다게 원래 차바스 디면다 당어 코도 용거 말아 도샤시다 디 무슨 제제 녀모 짜와라 디면나 아니 거기 원래 요 말아 세바 매나 개바 세바 쿠바 렘바 세기도 개바 세바다 쿠바 렘바 니디 매나 아니 거기 원래 요 말에 레 마보사샤 요나 레도 소리야 가르소래 소담게야 미주에 그거 추다 추매베스를 차래 사변지에 깜부깜부체 사깜불샤나 미에 요 말도 추다 류도서 잡선에 신의 메기라 상고 세바 매나 알사베 레토 좀 제부미야 요말 거기지 레커서 요나 근데 그 말이 방가서나 세바가고요 세바가나 차방 콘도가그라 진짜 지에서 콘도 연구라 지리 말씀 삼제 뒤섬된 가서나 아니 지요야 요말도 그래서 거기와래 요말에 거기와래 주소데 도자시다 무슨 데봐 이모델을 기들을 파바시트 용도도 이모델 메시베 몽바 당시 천지들 이모델이 안에 자시트 용도도 저자의 천지들도 근데 권도 천지들을 도주시트 용도도 이 숨라 시체는 과학 고려를 해서거라 다 대신에 매번 떠야 될 이모비 신이 매번 다음에 또그 시럽되게 다음에 모습도 이 또는 안에 신자 용해요 말이야 차바 용해요 말이야 차바 용해면 권도 용해요 말이야 이 숨든 도자시다 때 무슨도 도루도 말이반 가변 두신가 배치인가 개발세반가 그걸로만 이 타로 토베 추디셔요라 어디지라면 코안 중마다 도베를 많이 거네 된대야나 저 코아 kursu다 코안 독수디셔요다 대진 제발 좀 하세요 수대진 제발 좀 통화도 최통어서 된대들 뒤에 된대 상마이 지다 치 된대다 나게 된대 니요라 치 된대 설류장발로 받아서 사다 추다 사면다 뜻을 때는 게도 소리야 치 된지 제발 좀 하시기라 나게 된지 제발서 도매 말을 듣고 내가 이번 두지자 심지어 코아 코르다 주셔야 될 나게 된지 제발 좀 하시기라 치다 나게 된지 제발 좀 이시에도 어디지야 주나
So here, then, the dependent origination is taught in terms of the kinds of stages by which we engage in samsara. We are taking rebirth in samsara, and then it shows the way in which we achieve liberation, in which by stopping that fundamental cause of ignorance, we are able to then stop all of the links that come after. So in the sutra, it says, likewise, with the cessation of ignorance, conditioning factors cease. With the cessation of conditioning factors, consciousness ceases. With the cessation of consciousness, name and form cease. With the cessation of name and form, the six sense bases, and so on. And so here, when we talk about the stages of averting samsara or reversing that kind of process, it begins by getting rid of that ignorance. So it's not just a sort of lack of ignorance, the absence of that ignorance, but rather we need to develop the kind of mind that realizes the non-existence of the apprehended object of our grasping at a self, our grasping at things as being really truly existent. So by realizing that phenomena are not sort of independently existent in the way that we perceive them to be, they don't have this kind of existence in and of themselves or in their own right, it is by habituating our minds to that we are able to eventually realize that they don't exist in that way. That realization of selflessness, particularly the direct realization of selflessness, is that which is able to eliminate that ignorance. So we're not just talking about a sort of absence of that ignorance, but rather there's the necessity of developing a kind of wisdom that is in contradiction to that. It is able to eliminate that ignorance through realizing the lack of its apprehended object. And then by having eliminated that ignorance, we eliminate the kind of conditioning factors, the karmas that we create, that then leave imprints on the consciousness and so forth. And so in this way, the whole system of the 12 links of dependent origination is unraveled by eliminating that ignorance through developing the wisdom realizing selflessness. And here too, when one has then eliminated the kind of going to some of the further links, when we get up to the 8th and 9th link of craving and grasping, when we have eliminated that kind of craving, that sort of attachment to one side, when we get rid of that attachment toward ours and sort of aversion toward other, then we are able to get rid of all three of these poisons. Again, through even if we still have karmic seeds that we have created in the past, if we eliminate these links of craving and grasping, there's not the sort of factors that foster, that ripen those various kinds of karmas. So like if we have a seed, that seed has the potential to bring forth a sprout, but until we have the kind of conditions of soil and moisture and heat and so forth, it's not going to bring about a result. So if we stop that fundamental ignorance and stop the kind of attachment that arises from that fundamental ignorance, then we will get rid of the kind of craving and grasping that follow from that. So that ignorance, again, is only undermined by the direct realization of selflessness. And it is then through that that we're able to get rid of, like it's depicted in the wheel of life in the depiction of dependent origination. These three, the sort of pig of ignorance, the snake of hatred, and the like hen of attachment. And so here, this sutra, the Rice Seedling Sutra, describes dependent origination, both in terms of this internal process of dependent origination, as well as the kind of external dependent origination, as is applied to the example of a sprout. But in both cases, we have this process of dependent origination or dependent arising.
Tende yala ngama te jene tungeji pumbu chembu bashik bade juan juros tungeji so chembu segara koya tungeji so chembu bashik bade se kona de se pumbu kona se rawe taji yo mare de pumbu ti jone ne ta kyo lang yo re segara bashik se de pumbu bashik jo ma de rawe ta nga jo sabana shi de yo mare ti jong re segara tang ga be rimba sondu sa mare wan ga be duji ga be kyo ga sin de che Any tamade seba lembaga tungaji ye metewa the trubada tungaji pumbu chebu bashiba de gagban jurose tungaji so chebu bashiba de gadu sen gagber batirese tenje de ban junga telia chi tende de naga tende ni so chi tende zishina sela soba salu jamba la soba zabulin la soba tira naga tende kansa ko ta kulute dan do luti ni sa do ti chera ene chöder다 수 땡지 레버리 중앙 통화테 chö 통화세 땡지 레버리 중앙테 다 chö 통화세 chö데 가라스나 chö데리안이 요르도 뒤 chö다 레비 chö세라 뒤 chö데라 박벨함 야라 제버더라 야다베 따와 야다베 또와 야다베 소와 야다베 트바 야다베 띵이지 야다베 시럽세 게요르도 뒤 박벨함 야라 제세더라 레비 chö데 냥엘레 데버더라 땡도 타르바토 바테 될 레비 chö세 땡진 레버리 중앙 통화테세 야라 중이 권에 과 코르다다 도다데스 소소아 다 되네 chö 통화레서 chö데 박벨람 야라 게바다 딜레테네 타르바토 바테 chö 그단 람단 레분이 디셰도 디체 chö데를 팔람 야라 게디 셰도 야 어디 지셔나
So then each link is due to the previous one. So again, explaining the sort of stages by which we engage in samsara. It's again beginning with that link of ignorance. You have the rising of conditioning of factors occur, and then dependent on conditioning factors, consciousness, and so forth, all the way up to, as it says in the sutra, that then this entire great heap of suffering occurs in this way. So this is the process by which we sort of engage in samsara. All of the various sort of sufferings that occur for the being come due to this process of dependent origination. And then when it comes to the sort of reversal of that, it follows with an explanation of that likewise, with the cessation of ignorance, conditioning factors cease, and so forth, all the way up to this entire great heap of suffering will cease in this way. This is what the Buddha or the Blessed One has called dependent arising. So again, when it comes to dependent arising, it's referring to these causal processes, and there's one related to the external world. We can look at the way that rice seedlings arise in trees and so forth. And then there is the internal kind of dependent origination, referring to how we as sentient beings come to take birth and so forth. And so here, as it had said in the sutra, he who sees dependent arising sees the Dharma. And so here, when we are referring to the Dharma, this refers to two things, the sort of causal Dharma, which means the eightfold path, namely right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. Those sorts of causal things that will lead to the result. And so this is then the sort of resultant dharma that one knows is the attainment of nirvana. And so here then, that kind of referring to that definite liberation from that cycle of suffering, this is also part of the Dharma. So when the Buddha has said then that he who sees dependent origination sees the Dharma, this is referring to both that kind of causal Dharma and the resultant or affected Dharma.
Oh yeah. 다 팔람 야라 게데 투두 치치 셔셔나 다 마시지마. 박벨람 야라 게시도와. 이면가 더 시여서. 야. 야다베 따와서 그래 당부들이야. 야다베 따와서. 야다베 따와서 그래. 야다베 따와서도 메다바다 동해와다 동화다 다음에 발라서 봐. tentre tawate, we nesu da tuba tawate la yang tabe tawase do. Lokpa tawase nesu da metumba tube na lokpa tawate de ardo. Yang tabe tawase ra. Tire yang tabe tawase kare se resne yang tabe tawate yamsha do Tati malan jingire. Mita tunge tong tambe la soba. O tazu tobe tawa tele yanda be tawa sigra. Le jumde yobar tawa la soba. O tazu yanda be tawa ndu yare. Le jumde yobar tawa la soba. Le jumde mebar tawa kyo ngachi mebar tawa tazu lotare chidu yardo. Le jumde yobar tawa duche mita wa tunge wa tawa tambe la soba. Tinde tawa tele yanda be tawa sigidwa. Yanda be tawa che. Chida nga zo peche na liang di shung chimbo na shi tu pakpe nyamsha ya shi ki kapsu tokpe tawa di che tu di kapsu di yang jia tenpa tali ya yang tabe tawa se ya yo re. Tena tanda di kapsu shi tu sa chida kapsu re meta tunge tong tame le chumre le soba yobar tawa tala yang tabe tawa se shen di go ra. Yang tabe tawa se ya tu chi su na.
So here then, when it comes to this noble eightfold path of right view, right thought, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, and right concentration. So here, just to give a brief overview of this, when we talk about right view, this is referring to the view of impermanence and suffering and selflessness and emptiness. So wrong view, the opposite of that, would be those kinds of views that don't accord with reality. So here, within the context of right view, we can talk about the view that there is karma, having confidence in karma, cause and effect, and so forth. And so to have wrong view would be to deny things like past and future lives, to say that there is no karma, cause and effect. And so here, when we look in the great text, we can see the kind of view that one cultivates within meditative equipoise, recalling that or sort of holding on to that in the context of subsequent attainment can be referred to as the view as well, that kind of right view.
Oh yeah. Yadabe toba sigdo, yadabe toba se. Yadabe toba de shenlia susu tobe. Le jumde yoba toba le soba, kyoga yoba toba le soba. Mitaba tungewa tonga dame le soba. Rangi tobe tonda de shenlia koari chebe. Toba chiwarwa o ta didi shegu samsa. O tili yadabe toba sigdo. Yeah.
So, and then right thought is sort of based upon our own understanding of impermanence and so forth, how to explain that to others, how to make that something known to others. So when we have the kind of knowledge of impermanence and suffering and selflessness and so forth, the right thought is referring to how we make that known to others.
Yadabe tawadi Karsure, Vidatunga Tonda Melende la Soba, Kiwamachi la Soba, Chiverchibe, Yala de Sora, Yabate Sosa Hakoya Tondalia, Chivet Toto Chiverchigora. Ayanda Betoba de Shenla Quarchigora, Sosu Shibade, Shandalia Quarchibe, Yala, Tati Shego, Didi Shego Samsa, Sosu Shibade Mila, Tati Shever Chaku in Betopa Shora, Gulu Betopa Shora, or to the Sigora. Yanda be toba de shela koarchi be yala de sigora. Iragi chider toba de shela pa shegu something did shegu something there.
So here, right view, again, is referring to our own kind of investigation and analysis in order to have a correct understanding of reality. And right thought is then how do we take that understanding that we have gained and teach that to, or show that to others. So here, that's sort of the distinction between right view, referring to that kind of, that we have come to an understanding of through our own analysis versus what right thought is referring to that kind of intention to make that known to others, thinking about how we should explain that and so forth.
Raga shimbe mida tunga tonga mela soba le jumde la soba shala tumbar shibe nga tele ya yang da be nga sigdo 저 나게 다 꽤매버 제 중에 참아 지도 나게를 써봐 된데 매봐 아니 소소 시제 내주시 봐 어떠서 봐셔라 또 봐셔봐 그래 양답에 나서기도 야
Mhm. So then right speech refers to what we know, whether it is regarding karma, cause and effect, or past and future lives, or selflessness, teaching that to others in a way that doesn't use any sort of harsh speech or divisive speech, gossip, lying, those kinds of faults of speech, particularly without these four faults of speech. The way in which we convey that kind of knowledge that we ourselves have gained to others in a way that is free from any kind of defect, that is referred to as right speech.
야답에 레지 타서도 류지 레들 쓰고도 소주바 마지바 렘바 로임라 소바 류지 거네 좀 마셔 셔시 티치야 들려 그래서 야답에 레지 타서도 디나시 야답에 좋아서도 야답에 좋아서도 소소 초야가 된다 답시 들려 녹배 좋아 이거 사는 거로 녹수세를 밀은 거고 다야를 써보다 다 럽도 좋아하는 야 초롱다 들도스메라메라 요라 그치 다 된다 소소 초에 초대대 양다고 소소 내가 제 춤다 틈버전에 초하시마도 엔텔리아 춤다 겨울라 써보다로 저는 녹배 초아요도 미소 심제세네 저 득버사네 초하게 고야도 저 녹수로 와 진짜 매버셔 된다 소소 르 수답지와라 메시게다 지와라 메시게에 소소 내가 야부시세 춤대 틈바 내가 제 춤대 틈바시네 초하게 다데 양답에 소화를 되어라 이 멤버시에는 로소시에는 춤대 메팀바다 심제 세발라 소바다 멜고고다 원래 소바다 디바사네니 소화 예 벤조 주게 되는 로소시가라 소소 수답데 메시게에 야부시세 소주바다 머신발렘바다 로임을 소바든데 매버시 추다 팀백권에 네 메시 소화시바들 쓰기도 양답에 소화시야.
So right action then is referring to abiding in the kind of proper conduct, free from those sorts of non-virtues of body, not engaging in killing or stealing or sexual misconduct. That is what is referred to as right action. And then right livelihood is referring to whatever we do to sustain ourselves, we should do so ethically. We should do so in a way that isn't harming others or deceiving others or trying to take advantage of others. Now, when it comes to those who have taken ordination, there's particularly other sorts of components to what it means to have right livelihood. But we should, in general, avoid any kind of livelihood that is causing harm to others. We should act in ways that are in accordance with the law and do things in a way that doesn't involve, say, killing others or deceiving them, stealing from them. We shouldn't engage in any sort of non-virtuous actions in order to sustain ourselves and be able to live. So right livelihood involves not engaging in any kind of non-virtue for the sake of one's livelihood.
chunal chune kasa sere sholong sere tinde mabushe to rabdu chode ine ya chocho ne ko pige choa ke ta le ke me che number ta buske ko kimba ine ko da shenji so che wala so wa da tibasa ne timda ge ko ne choa me be che so so me si ke ta de ya bu che choa te le se do o te sumbu de se wara ya da be nga ya da be le ki ta ya da be choa sumbu de she yi che bar che ba shen yi chebar yana resi ora. O midi tembare ti kezi shega maran goko tanga maresam. Ti kwe cheba yaku chigresa kwe sheba di yangda waresam. Rabdi chunga rizine tsoa mambu chokshi meba mambu saya da tindre meba. Yoshe nyungba la sawa se. Yoshe nyung mado mambu be karsura. Deba zan tsoya meba tindre me cheba chokshi che. Chala rabi shene rabdi chunga ne chala 소소 두로이나 니 숨라 냐초요 마라 당부도 소소 제 니버디 제부제 숨버디 현달이었거나 로바 제고였음 디마도 잘라 마부 냐초요 마라 지다 미 텐데리시라 시다 고고를 하고 냐요 마라 미 현달로 고 마부 팽기라 현달 고에 시도 냐나 냐르마도 딩에 삼사 어텐데 제초요 마도 소하게다 될레시거래 어때서 셴 미즈고 소술 류당아다 근데 줄람게 토네 소하게다가 전에 20회로 미디 센데레 삼사 어떤데 셴 이치버 집에 양아 이체라 야
So then here, again, when it refers to right action, that's particularly those kinds of being without those sorts of harmful actions of body, like killing and stealing and sexual misconduct. Whereas right livelihood encompasses our body, speech, and mind, particularly when we talk about the context of those who are ordained. There are specific sort of rules, but they also apply to others of not sort of getting what we want through deceit or through flattery or various other kind of dishonest sort of means. And so this then, together with the next of right effort, these are really the sort of branches or causes for people to have confidence in you. If you have a kind of, like say for example, someone who is ordained, who is wearing the robes, and they have a great deal of sort of satisfaction with what they have, they are satiated, they don't strive after many different things, they're not always wanting sort of more, they're content with what they have, and they live their life in a way, they sustain themselves in an ethical kind of manner. Those are the sort of causes for someone to look at them and have faith in them or have confidence in them, see them as being a trustworthy or a sort of valid kind of person. So here, when it comes to, like for example, the way someone who is ordained conducts themselves, they shouldn't have a great deal of attachment to various types of material possessions. Like when it comes to clothing, you're allowed to have, as someone who is ordained, you can have the clothes that you're wearing, one change of clothes, and a third set, like just in case someone else needs one, and you're able to then be able to offer that. And so the ways in which these three branches, again, of right action, of avoiding anything harmful with our physical actions, the right livelihood, the way that we sustain ourselves in terms of with speech and body as well, and the kind of efforts that we are making, these are, when one develops this correctly, they are the cause for others to gain a kind of confidence in you based upon that, look at you as someone who is trustworthy and honest.
Oh yeah. Today yada be nga de ta namda le yi chi chi yori chara ku she ke je de le kyum de da chi Japanese jile soba kari shekina odi ku tawa samlu tanda de manora shi yanda bashi du samche tawa namdali ichi bachi gore chara. Tene yanda be ngarwa leji tadirwa leji tadigi leji tada yanda be choa nibudik sigora ene kari chigore si nga digi tawa namdadu ichi bachi yanda be leji tada yanda be 소환이 부되게 수준 넘버 잡아 수준 넘버 잡아 야다베 가 대체 따와 이체 버셔 야다베 레지 타셔 되게 수준 넘버 잡아 이체 버셔 야다베 초아세 되게 요제용 봐 잘라 망보 만약에 초시 여게 로다 럽도 좀어지네 고잘라 단도 셰바 니 숨라 냐초요 말아 최고로 지네 도로 숨냐 저거 마트 들라냐요 말에 당부디체 그해체 니버티 제부자야체 숨바데 샹달로 거나 도로 맹게든데 샹달 거나 샹게던도 냐마도 가라 거요 삼선냐요 말에 어때나시 쉐바르 제니 kim바이나고 초시적으로라 망보시 당대시제 대국에서는 망보시지 고야래 도가도 이 고야요 말도 싫다 다이네 텐데세가 말 소소스 티르치라 마다네 껴도아 뇽아도도 코치데 고야 맵시 대교라 마도도 망보 쉐베지샤네 강보 코로나리아 그 한국 니슈숨 주지 가르치는 가시 어티시 따뜻다 요새 뉴뉴냐에 대해서 지소 현대를 kup해서 소소시다 망부전에 노트서로 망부 그거는 망부전에 갈래 쇼식하는 것도 뺀저게 만다서 갈래서 오라 르초에 기탑시 따따따따 시대다 마데면서 산제게 뒤송고도 우메람서야 돼 당부대 초아대 우메람을 땡고를 시라 야가다는 게 시계버전에 밀레 초시 맞전에 참여 말해 tiene tigo tan soya yo mara ume lam se ta ke ta mai ba nyung da ne lu cho me to ba ka nge yo ten de mai ba sa ya le ka nge to ya ka nge so bu me ju se ka nge tin de yo ne ma de ba me chi de ya wo chi ke go ra sa ka nge ma we se ta le ma lo che e to da chi ne so bu cho me to ba ka nge yo ba tin de me ba sho de so yo de se ya dan we cho shi chi me ba se ne ta lo tin de se ma de ma 우메람 따다지 시다야 보면 시다도 보면 초토가 어떤 데서 소그래서 우메람데 당부터 소소 메시 깨다 거라 벤조가 전에 우메람 시에도 디젤연이 따외 전에 우메람 시에 와라 어째서 어쩌는 데서 고요도 야 디소나
So here, then, connecting to, again, I think I may have skipped over right speech. So when it comes to having right speech, if one speaks in a way that accords with reality, that helps for others to then gain confidence in the correct kind of view. So we can see the sort of, within the sort of rubric of right view, right thought and right speech sort of go with that. Right speech giving kind of confidence in that correct view. And then when it comes to right action, right livelihood, right effort, these sort of go under right ethics, or one could say like pure ethics. So here again, when it comes to the way that we live our lives, particularly for those who are ordained, it's said that like they shouldn't have more than 3 of anything, including like clothing. If you are, you can have one set of clothes that you're wearing, one set of clothes to change into when you need to, and then the third is really for someone else if they might need it. And any of these things are not to be sort of held with the thought of like, oh, this is mine, and really grasping on it in that way, but rather seeing it as something that you are sort of temporarily using, and not have this sense of always needing more. This kind of satiation is very important even for householders, even for those who are not ordained. It's like if we have too many things, that in itself creates a problem. Like you can see people's houses that are sort of stuffed with various objects. Like there are people that have 20, 30 pairs of shoes and things like that. And so generally having less is better for everyone. It's better for our society and our environment, but it's also sort of better for us as individuals. If we can, again, as the Buddha has stressed in every sort of context, finding the middle way is really important. If we don't put some sort of limit on ourselves and don't feel some kind of contentment or satiation, there's no limit to the extent of like our grasping and our wanting and our needing to have more and more. And so we don't want to fall into that kind of extreme of needing to have so many things. But on the other hand, we don't want to live such a sort of impoverished life that we struggle to just stay alive or to take care of ourselves. So there needs to be a middle way where we are not so attached to having the nicest things and the greatest things and wanting to have more and so forth, and sort of sustaining ourselves or taking care of ourselves in a way that finds a balance between those kinds of extremes of needing to have everything or being in this sort of place of need and impoverishment. In all cases, it's important to take that kind of middle way.
양답에 좋아서야 되라 양답에 좋아서야 되고 년도도 전주 선바도 수인하러 예란도 전주 선바 컨디션에 수수게 예모션다지 반차르디 반차는 다디 공마디 방야게 좋아지거라 배수치거라 말아주르지나 고비게 수수 밀격지셔 저 참아 지금도 아주 반도나 다 나게다 차도데 바토면도 삼베니야 고마요데 데데티 바에 탑시체 심배수치거라 단단단데 교가르 반도네 티바 디 고마 바에다 디 고메요 데토열에 좋아지야 되수라 양답에 좋아하세 야 지치람
And then when it comes to right effort, here, this is, again, making the kind of effort to abandon those things which should be abandoned and develop those kinds of higher qualities, whether it is like a hearer or a bodhisattva, whatever sort of afflictions maybe they have overcome, they are still striving to then overcome those which they have not yet gotten rid of. So there's a sense of like trying to strive for higher and better qualities, and also to get rid of those things that we want to eliminate. So we might say have worked on like not lying and not deceiving others, but we might think like, well, I don't know about my pride or about my jealousy. Could I really get rid of that? The kind of right effort is to know what it is that needs to be done and to try to make an effort at that, whether it's developing higher qualities or trying to get rid of our various afflictions. So it's like making effort at getting rid of whatever is sort of faulty, whatever it is that we would like to eliminate. We strive to eliminate that, and whatever sort of qualities, whatever kind of higher qualities we are striving to attain them. This is right effort. And then right mindfulness here, mindfulness is important in the context of like developing calm abiding, or in any other sort of context where we're talking about this idea of not forgetting the object, holding in a way that we don't forget that sort of object. And so mindfulness, along with introspection and conscientiousness, are really crucial kind of faculties, whatever we are doing, whether it is trying to develop that kind of single-pointed concentration of calm abiding, or when we are doing any sort of activity. So it's important in any context. Like when we are talking about, like, say we are reading a book and sort of having that kind of mindfulness of what we are reading is the idea of mindfulness. And then introspection is that faculty which examines, are we really staying on that book, or is our mind wandering off to some other kind of topic? So that kind of like that spy or that faculty of introspection is looking into seeing whether or not we have lost our mindfulness. And then there is conscientiousness or awareness that is really important as well, which is the factor that allows us to actually be careful with what we are doing. So maybe you are like you're reading your book and you recognize like, oh yeah, my mind has strayed, and you just don't care, sort of like, yeah, it's strayed, and you don't do anything to correct that or bring that back. This is the function of conscientiousness, to recognize, oh, this is something I don't want to be doing, and we try to correct course. So when we are, say, reading a book, or we are saying our prayers, whatever sort of activity, and we're trying to be present, be mindful of what we're doing, we shouldn't allow our minds to stray away. And especially if they do stray away, we shouldn't have the kind of lack of conscientiousness that's just like, oh yeah, I lost that, I let my mind go, or whatever. So here, this is something that we should try to, this kind of mindfulness, being aware of where our thoughts are, and also the faculty of introspection and conscientiousness are very important.
Oh yeah. I don't know, she never come back up the chain. Jump at the chow car she was in. She went out Gueva, so you were come never she was. She went out Gueva, so may own a taxi chigora. Gaviora. Jump at the you in a cook come you. Lega chiguna, candy chiguna, carry chiguna, chasaguna. Ra, come you chigora. What the change de yora. Change de Dusanico. You thought I take it to a tagiorto. The Shandajil sim to Rochicatuna, Queva Sigra. Shandajil sim to Rochicatuna, oh, that Queva Jugudas, or Queva de Mabas, Yanga, so Samet, and that the two Tenudia, Savage Tenjuara. I am a tips at the new Kudochema, Shu Jagametona, she will want to do something. And the uncle, Jambai Tenguara. It's your mayocha, Sambuche Tagira. Seneco. Jambadi Shine Combe coverage in it. Chiwada Queva Mayo, Queva Joa Cameva Chigres, Queva Mijoada, Chiwa Mijoa, Kichigora, Tapsi, Lega Chigora, Chawade. Oh, anything is in the raw. That the thing is in the notion. Yanda with things in the town, I said, don't that to go Carsoda. Ragi. Comje yu tele semche shi do ne che te yo to o ti le che ya da be ting che ya ti chi lo shen de ma ta.
So here, in terms of mindfulness, the kind of function of mindfulness is to prevent the arising of dullness or excitement. These are kind of variously translated, but the kinds of faults that prevent us from being able to achieve calm abiding. So we need to be aware that like if our mind is, say, becoming dull, or sort of if we are getting to the point where we are going to get distracted away to another object, we need to have the ability to recognize that and bring our minds back. So when the way in which mindfulness is then able to sort of prevent us from giving rise to this sinking and excitement, those kinds of faults of calm abiding. And then in terms of right concentration, this is similar to the kind of function of right mindfulness, of having that sort of holding the object of meditation in a correct sort of way in order to develop that kind of single-pointed concentration on a particular object. So in this way, we need right mindfulness as well as right concentration.
Oh yeah, so Chutomate, Sanje Tongo said, Teletene, Sanje Jungo say, and they could then get Sanje Togan Yola so what and this young grace of Budaya.
And so here, continuing from the sutra, then again it says that he who knows the Dharma, he or she who knows the Dharma knows the Buddha. And so then it says that, well, what is the Buddha, the Blessed One? He is called Buddha because he comprehends all the Dharmas by means of the noble's eye of discriminating insight and the body of enlightened qualities. He is enlightened and sees the Dharmas of the learner and the learned. So here, based upon, again, seeing the Dharma, one then sees or understands the Buddha, the one who has attained this state of enlightenment.
Oh yeah, that is it.
So we will stop there for today as we're out of time.
May the spiritual teachers who lead me on the sacred path, and all spiritual friends who practice it, have long life. May I pacify completely all outer and inner hindrances. Grant such inspiration, I pray. May the lives of the venerable spiritual mentors be stable, and their virtuous actions spread in the 10 directions. May the light of Lovesome's teachings dispelling the darkness of the beings in the 3 worlds always increase. Idam Guru Due to this merit, may we soon attain the awakened state of Guru Buddha, that we may be able to liberate all sentient beings from their suffering. May the precious Bodhi mind, not yet born, arise and grow. May that born have no decline, but increase forevermore.
Oh yeah.
Thank you for these precious teachings. And thank you for your
Kuchanangela.
clear interpretation. Much. And we'll see everyone here next week, next Thursday morning.
Tunda jema jeo.
Oh yeah, that's all. Oh yeah, all that. Oh yeah, just that.
Recording.
Oh yeah.